And I think this is so important because I've worked with the Orlando Magic as a scout for the last 9 years, and as the general manager for the minor league team for this is my fourth season. And I've learned so much. I mean, you learn so much as a player, but then when you go to being a coach, as you coaches know, and managing a team and being a general manager, you learn the game, and a scout, you learn the game from a different way. And one of the first things I would say to young children that are trying to become great basketball players or great shooters is, you hear the saying 90% of sports is mental. 90% of the sports is up here. And I never really fully understood that until after I was done playing. And I say that with regard to shooting, because shooting is so much up here. You have so many players, even at the professional level, that want to do everything perfect. And if they miss a couple shots or anything like that, they struggle. And I would say to young players that the key is to get mentally strong, have a short memory. And what I mean by short memory is basketball is a game of mistakes. You will make a ton of mistakes. And the players that hang on to those mistakes, they struggle because it carries on to other plays. And so shooting is obviously repetition. It's form. It's when you're young and you learn your multiplication tables, it just takes time to get to learn to memorize all the multiplication tables. And so a lot of the mechanics have to be taught. And then you have to understand that it's going to take time. You're going to miss shots, and mentally get to the place where you're okay with making mistakes. And that goes for shooting, and that goes for really everything in life, but we're talking about basketball. Well, sometimes I didn't. As a player, I was not good at this. Sometimes I would hang on to it. My personality is a people pleaser. I want to do right for the team. I want to do right for the coach. I don't want to let anybody down. And a lot of players, a lot of professional players, have the same issue. And so, you have to understand that you're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss shots. Steph Curry is probably the greatest shooter basketball's ever seen, and he misses 60% of his shots. The greatest shooters in the world miss 60% of their shots. So with that mentality, you have to understand you're going to miss shots, and not you can do everything perfect, and it's not going to go right. But in practice, you have to practice talking to yourself positively before the ball arrives. A lot of players react when they hit a shot, but mentally, you have to prepare yourself, no matter miss or make, that this is a good shot. I've practiced this. And my sister worked with Kobe Bryant for a while. And a good Kobe Bryant story is this. He came in from halftime, and he had a terrible, terrible first half, missed, a ton of shots, right? So one of his teammates came over to him and he said, "Kobe, man, keep shooting. It's going to be okay." And Kobe said, "I know it's going to be okay. I've worked too hard for the next shot not to go in." So that's the mentality that you have to have as an elite basketball player. Work creates confidence. The repetition and the work create so how you get your confidence in anything, but as a basketball player, is through the work. And you've prepared yourself so much that it's almost like when you're in school and you studied so much and you're ready for the test, you can walk into the classroom confidently because you know the material. And it's the same thing on the court. And so the confidence when you're going through a tough time, whether it's shooting or whatever, you're prepared. You know that you're ready for this. And they say you fall to the level of your training in competition. And so that's why it's so important for the repetition and to put the work in and to be a hard worker, because in those tough moments, in those tight moments, in those big moments where everybody's looking at you, you know you're ready for it. I think you have to, because I've been in several moments where the ball wasn't coming to me, and I've been in a couple moments where it did. But I think you have to begin the positive conversation with yourself when you walk out of the huddle. So a lot of people, you can be like, "Oh no, I don't want to miss this shot. I don't want to mess up." Um, and inevitably you will, right? Because you're thinking about it. So coming out of those situations, you have to think, hey, whatever happens, happens. I prepared for this moment. I have earned the right to take this shot. And that's why the work is so important. You have to earn the right to take this shot. And when you miss those shots that you're prepared for, you can live with that. You can go home, you can sleep, you want to make it, but if you miss, you're going to miss way more of those shots than you make. But courage isn't the courage to take those shots isn't making all of those shots. It's missing some of those shots. And not everyone is willing to do that. And I think that's what separates great players from everyone else. And obviously you have to have a certain level of talent to make it to the NBA, to make it to the EuroLeague, to play in the Israeli League. Like, you have to have a certain level of talent. But some of the other things that I look for that a lot of people I don't think realize are, number one, you know, when a player falls down or there's a tough moment in a game, how do his teammates react to him? So if he falls down, our teammates running over to pick him up. If he scores a shot, our teammates happy for him, because that tells me that the teammates love him, that they like him, that they like playing with him, and he's a team guy. So that's one thing. I think other thing is, I love people that are competitive. I love people that compete, that when something bad happens to them, they bounce back. So if I'll look at a player, and if another player turns the ball over, does he hang his head and say, and like, you know, oh, this guy, you know, he messed up, or does he hustle back and try to make a play on the defensive end? Because to me, that player is the one that's competing, the one that's not pointing fingers at teammates, and that's playing the right way. Another thing is in timeouts. You know, as players are in timeouts, are they engaged in the huddle? Are they looking at their coach? Are they following what's going on? Because sometimes you see players in the huddle and they're kind of looking off and they're not paying attention. And so, you know, one of the things you realize as a professional is that you are always being seen. You're always being evaluated. Someone is always looking at you. From the time you step on the court, when you're warming up, how serious are you? Are you taking game shots, or are you throwing up half-court shots? You come out there and start doing your form shooting, where you start under the basket and work your way out, or do you just go to the three-point line and start throwing up three-pointers? So all of those things tell me something about that player's preparation, his focus, his approach. And, you know, the most important things are what the player's made of, I think, how the player's made. So that's what I look for on the court. I was growing up never the most talented player. I was not the most talented player on my team. I was not always the most, you know, you hear about Deni Avdija. I was never that at that age. I was never. You know, I've had to, like, at each level, work my way into becoming good. And it's helped me because it's formed my mentality and my approach to everything. My dad from a very early age told me that you're going to have to work to get to where you want to go. And hey, you want to be a professional basketball player? Okay, these are the things that you're going to have to do every day, every week, each year. And it comes with sacrifices. It comes with hard work. But the real thing is not winning the EuroLeague championship. It's not getting to the NBA. What's the most gratifying thing that you understand and that great players understand is the work along the way. That's what's most gratifying. That's what you have to fall in love with as a player to get to where you want to go, to be maximized as a player. That's why I always tell my players here in the NBA or in the G League is that your goal is to maximize yourself. And we don't know what that is. Maybe it's EuroLeague, maybe it's the NBA, maybe it's not. But the goal is to maximize who you can become as a person and as a player. I think it's a balance. As a young player, you know, I think you should always, you know, what I tried to do is I tried every season to add something to my game. So whatever it was, every year I wanted to come back and be 50% better. And I wanted to add a component to my game that I didn't have the previous year. So maybe I'm just a three-point shooter and I want to get better at driving and finishing around the rim. Or maybe I'm a driver and I got to get better at shooting. Maybe I'm a point guard and I need to improve my decision making on pick and rolls. So all of those things each year, you can't do everything, but you have to pick a couple things that you're going to get better at and focus on those things. And I don't know that there's a time limit each day. Like life happens, you have school, you have things, but I know that each day, if I had an opportunity, I think one of the things that I've learned is we all have 24 hours, right, in a day. Everyone has 24 hours. And I had this conversation with my son. I said, listen, I can tell you what your priorities are and what's important to you by looking at your 24 hours. If I see 2 hours of video games and 15 minutes of basketball, your priorities are video games. It's not basketball. So it's very easy. If you want to get good at something, I should be able to look at your 24 hours and see that you're dedicating more of your time to what you're pursuing than anything else. And so I think that's something that I try. Obviously, you have nights where you have a lot of homework and you can't get to basketball at school first. But aside from that, if basketball is something that's important to you, or playing an instrument, or computer programming, whatever it is, that's what you have to invest your time doing. And this is such a good question because I think as people, as basketball players, but also in life, you know, we have a tendency to not live in the moment. And it sounds cliche. It sounds, like whatever, but it's so true because the reality is this: a lot of players and people worry about the past and it affects the present. And a lot of people worry about the future and it affects the present. And truly the only thing that you can really impact is right now, where you're at, and what's going on in this moment. And I think when I learned that, it was really at Maccabi because of the amount of pressure that you play under every day. If you worry about what's happened in the last game or last play, or what can happen if you don't make this shot or you're going to go crazy. And so I truly just got to a point where I was taking it possession by possession. And the saying is, be where your feet are, be present, be right where you're at, and focus on what you're supposed to do right now, not worrying about anything else. And that's something that takes practice. It doesn't happen overnight. Just because you know something doesn't mean that you can do it. And so I think you have to give yourself time to get there, but it's being present for this free throw. It's being present for this possession, and it's having a short memory as to what's happened prior, right? So short memory means I made a mistake last time. I've got to get over that. I can't keep thinking about that mistake, because then that mistake gets turned into right now and in the future, and it hurts our team and hurts yourself more. So that's something that you have to practice at. That's something that mentally you have to continue to talk to yourself about and get over. And goes back to my earlier point about the game being 90% mental, and a lot of the great players still struggle with that as well. But I think Kobe, the Mamba mentality, that's kind of what he's talking about. That's some of the things of what he's talking about, is being present and not thinking about what's already happened. One of the things I started doing very early on, I started to read books. My dad encouraged me to read kind of self-help growth type books, especially for your mind. And one of the things that I learned very early on is visualization. Visualization is basically picturing what happens in your mind before it actually happens. So if you go up to the free throw line, you visualize yourself shooting and making the free throw before it actually happens. And so you're just giving yourself positive feedback, positive thoughts, and you're seeing yourself succeeding before it happens. And so I used to sit back before a game and try to picture the game, what's going to happen, what things I can do well, who am I playing, what are his habits, what does he like to do, and visualize myself trying to take those away, visualize myself in places where I get the ball, and what I usually do. And so all of those things are just mentally preparing yourself for good things to happen, as opposed to, I think a lot of players take the floor and they're influenced by what happens on the floor. Well, you have the ability to influence what happens on the floor before you even get on the floor. And that doesn't mean that you're going to play every game perfectly, but it means that it gives yourself the best chance to go out and play the best you can on that day. The coach with the most effect on me, I don't know if this counts, but my dad coached me, and my dad has always been my greatest basketball influence. He's been there for me from day one. He played as well. He got to college with the University of Iowa playing basketball, and I think, you know, it's kind of like you're able to stand on people's shoulders that have been there before. And so I definitely stand on his shoulders because he was able to show me a lot of the things that he didn't realize he needed till he got to college. And in turn, I'm doing that with my son. And so, the longer you can play, the higher you play, the more you learn. And so for me, I was able to play, I was blessed to play 15 years as a professional. And this is entering my 9th year as a scout. And I've learned so much more in these 9 years working with the Orlando Magic, just about players, about the mentality, and about, the things that players need to have in order to be maximized, to become the best that they can be. So I always give my dad, my sister does the same thing, Candace Parker. She also says that my dad has been her greatest basketball influence and has really given us the tools to be successful, not only in basketball. A lot of people don't know this. My brother is a doctor. He's a radiologist. He went to one of the best medical schools in the world, Johns Hopkins. And so the things that my parents taught us very early on don't just apply to basketball, it applies to life. And so I think, I love to bring that up because this isn't just about how you become successful at basketball. It's just about being successful, period. Yes, I think that is the most important thing. If you're only touching the basketball during practice, I don't know how much better you're going to get. Um, well, you won't get to where you want to get to. I think, you know, I've heard the saying, education is what others do to you, learning is what you do to yourself. And so most people are okay just being educated, but the true learning happens when you go out and you seek the information and you learn it for yourself. And I think it's the same in basketball. You can go through practice, but coaches, there's just not enough time in the hour and a half, 2 hours, or whatever you have in practice to go over plays, do conditioning, get everybody shot. Like you just don't have enough time to work on the skills that you need to get better for your game to go to the next level. And so you have to work outside of practice. And I'm realistic. I know sometimes that's not possible with school, and you already have basketball practice, and maybe you don't have access to a gym or whatever. But my son, we have courts that are probably like 5-10 minutes from our house, and he walks or rides his bike over there whenever he can. Maybe he finishes it early in homework and he can go get workouts in, or maybe it's the weekend and instead of playing video games, he has to go get workout in. Or maybe he can't get to the courts and he has to stay around the house and do ball handling drills. But I think the idea is that there has to be a pattern of every day getting better. That's the saying, right? Get better every day. And it's not going to be, a 50% getting better in a week. It's going to be a small thing that over time you look back and you say, hey, now I can do that. And the other thing I want to impress upon kids is this: the most important thing for parents and adults, you guys know this, is that get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what do I mean by that? If everybody on here folds their arms like this, everybody folds their arms a certain way, right? Like I put my right over my left. But if you unfold them and try to do it the other way, you're still folding your arms, but it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel natural, right? And that's the process of learning. It does not feel comfortable and it does not feel natural. And most people reach for comfort instead of growth. And that's the difference, I think, between greats in any profession is you have to learn to get uncomfortable and be fine with that. So when you start playing basketball and shooting a left-hand layup is not comfortable, that's okay. Because guess what? Over time, it gets comfortable. But you have to be okay with going through the process of being uncomfortable to get to where you want to go as a basketball player. And it's a continuing process. You never get to the point where you've mastered the game and you can do everything. So that's why that process is so important. Of every year, I was like, hey, that's what I meant earlier when I wanted to add to my game. I wanted to do something that I couldn't do. And I had to go through that process of being really, really bad at it, being really bad at it, and then getting good at it over time. And it wasn't something that happened in a day or a week. It's a process. But you have to be okay with being uncomfortable and maybe not looking good sometimes, maybe not looking good in front of your teammates or your coaches or the fans. But you know that it's a process of getting better at it. A lot of times we're restricted by this fear of failing, right? This fear of missing a shot, missing a free throw. In life, there are things that we're afraid of that maybe we don't want to speak in front of people, right? That's kind of scary in case we don't sound right. And I want to encourage all of the kids out here, especially the kids, is do something that makes you uncomfortable and makes you a little scared. Maybe it's talking in front of people. Um, don't be afraid to do those things. And there's a difference between like fear and danger, right? Like danger is, if there's a deadly snake or there's a shark in the water, you don't want to go swimming. I'm not talking about danger. I'm talking about fear. And what I've learned is when you do things that you're fearful of, one of two things is going to happen. First, you'll fail, but then you'll realize that it's not that bad, that life goes on, that you wake up the next day, that everything is okay. And you're okay to kind of fail again because you realize that it's okay, right? The second thing is that you succeed. And then you realize this thing that you were afraid of this whole time really wasn't that big of a deal. And you have more confidence to do either that thing or other things that you're fearful of. So I would encourage everyone to get in the habit of doing things that make them fearful, that make them a little uncomfortable, because I think that's where the real growth is, both as a person and as a basketball player. Ultimately, all I want to do is help players and people become better versions of themselves. And I think, like for me, it's learning from a lot of high level people, how to become better. So it's all about growth for me. It's about becoming better and helping others become better than they were. And if it's something that they can learn from my basketball career or my journey as a player, great. But ultimately, I think that's where the real fulfillment is for me. As a player growing up, my dad used to get mad at me because like the thing that I enjoyed most doing was passing. I loved passing and getting other people shots. That's what really, like when I made a shot, great. But when I passed, like my eyes lit up. That's what did it for me. And so as a person, it's still what's true. Like I love helping, assisting others in something that maybe they don't get or haven't seen, and being able to talk to them, and then maybe they get it and my eyes still light up. It still brings the same fulfillment for me. So that's more what I'm after than a general manager or a role or anything like that. I've seen guys that are 7 feet tall that have all of the physical tools and athleticism to be great, and they're not. And I've seen guys that are 5'10" that are like the best competitors, and I would take on my team any day of the year. A player that comes to mind is a guy named Josh Majette. He's actually playing in Turkey right now. He's a left-handed guy. I think he's like 5'10", and he is a competitor. And one thing I will say is if you're not going to be tall, you have to be highly skilled. We look at Steph Curry and all of the things that he does, and he's a great shooter, but he is highly skilled. And that's because he grew up being the smallest, being the least athletic on the court, and he had to be highly skilled to be able to play with those at that level. And so that means you have to understand the game. You have to be smarter than everybody. You have to be a step ahead of everybody. And skill wise, you have to be one of the best on the court. If you don't have the height, if you don't have the athleticism. Number one, understand that you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. the process of learning is that it's being uncomfortable and learning until you get comfortable. And so being okay with that is the number one thing. A lot of people don't want to look foolish or fail in front of other people, and it limits what you can become. So be okay with that, because the best in the world fail every day. Sometimes it's on a big stage, sometimes it's not, but that's the process you have to get to. There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it really changed how I parented my kids. It's not about, you know, being perfect. It's not about getting all A's. It's not about doing everything right on the basketball court. It's about encouraging them to continue to learn, to grow, and to do things that make them uncomfortable, and encourage them as they do it. Congratulate them for doing that, for putting themselves out there and making themselves uncomfortable, because I think that's the process to real growth. And then the last thing is the work. You have to encourage work. Work ethic is, I think, one of the most important things. If you don't have a work ethic, it's hard to get good in anything. The idea that some people are just naturally talented or gifted, it's only going to take them so far. I will take the hard worker over the naturally talented person anytime. And so I think encouraging our children to develop a work ethic in whatever it is, they have to continue to work to get better. And that's really all I have. I thank everyone for their time. Thank you so much for your questions. I wish you guys all the best, and I miss you guys. I want to come back over to Tel Aviv soon.